Hey fans, today I am going on an adventure through history for the great Lone Star State of Texas. I am here at a nice historical marker marking where Texas Revolution began, and I am going to check it out and check out where the Goliad incident occurred. So stay tuned to this video and hope you enjoy. Now we're gonna walk over. Here's a list of the names of the men who served, who brought freedom to Texas and the Texians. The spirit of independence. So we're gonna go on a little adventure through history. And know that their sacrifices were not in vain, and that we are a great state in the United States, and that they accomplished the goal they set out for. So here we are. The marker is actually on the outside of Cost, which is outside of Gonzales, and this is where the school was. Give you guys a look at Texas skies. Up, and here's another marker we're gonna walk over to. Then we'll drive on up to the monument that they were talking of and the two sites. So this is the Dykes Family Cemetery. So we're looking at land where a skirmish would have taken place. Just look at all the open land. So a lot of this is private property, so we do have to be careful and respectful. As you can see, land where another skirmish took place. Just hard to believe that these trees may have been little saplings when Texas got its freedom. So here's the monument that was in that sign. Let's see if we can get a breeze to see the "Come and Take It" and Texas flag flying. It's just so quiet. Just looking at everything around. Oh, there's the Texas flag flying. Alright, well, we're gonna head over to Gonzales to check out to see if we can find a cannon, and then head out to Goliad. When I was younger, we went to the Alamo and San Jacinto, so these will be wrapping up the major sites of the Texas Revolution for me and the history of Texas being born. So stay tuned. Checking out some spots here in Gonzales. As you can see here, Gonzales was founded in 1825. Here you can see an example of what housing was like without the glass doors. Gonna walk around to the front. There's the back of that brick building. see what it has to say in the front. These really cool Texas stars. Oh, here we go. View of the front. Let's see if we can zoom in. This is the Eggleston house. Oh, cool. Here's the story of Sarah Haunton Eggleston. Since the gate's open, let's take a look. Wow, just check out that glass. Very likely that's original glass. Let's see, there's a bed in there. Let's see. They built these really nicely. As you can see, it would be kitchen on one side and sleeping on the other side. And there's a button here that says push for message, so...
After San Jacinto, April 21st, 1836, former colonists of DeWitt's colony of Gonzales began their long and painful trek back to their former homes on the Guadalupe. Among those who came to join the settlement at Gonzales was one Horace Eggleston and his family. In the runaway scrape, nothing was left of the former settlement here. Consequently, there was much to be done. Just one shelter had been left standing in Gonzales. We envisioned the devastation and the adventurous, the proud, the brave, seeking homes and new land. We see at the same time the ruins of the rude shelters of former occupants, the clearings, stark and lonely. We also see brave men, true women, builders of homes, fillers of forest, founders of states, the human tide which came on and on. And with the return of these men and women, slowly the savage Indians and wild beasts were driven back. Their days and nights were filled with fear, and the slow years saw scenes of massacre and war. Year after year, the settlers fought and toiled and suffered and increased. To Horace Eggleston, this was the dawn of a new day. He had been a member of Austin's colony on the Brazos and came to Gonzales seeking the rights of liberty and freedom of speech and the right to serve God according to the dictates of his own conscience. He also was seeking the right to toil and the right to use the results of his labor for the pursuit of happiness for himself and his family. The destiny of a great state was in keeping of the colonists, and there was much work to be done. Horace Eggleston, having faith in the future of Texas and faith in his fellow man, was the first after San Jacinto's climate state to erect a permanent home in Gonzales. Located near the banks of the Guadalupe River, that home is known today, nearly a century and a quarter later, as the Eggleston House, oldest in the city. From 1836 until the fruits of their labor had blessed them, the settlers had been busy pushing back the virgin forest, driving back the marauding Indians and the wild beasts in order to have room to expand. It was in 1840 that Horace Eggleston purchased the site for a home. The site was on lots numbers 1 to 6 of block number 15 in the inner town of Gonzales. In the same year, by the help of friends and some slave labor, he erected his home. It must be remembered that lumber was not available. Neither was hardware for sash and door. Glass was a rarity, but Mr. Eggleston went right ahead with his building using the knowledge available at that time. Jesse K. Davis, a builder from Austin's colony, had cast his lot with the settlers of Gonzales, and it was to this man that Mr. Eggleston appealed for help. The two together planned a home built along the lines of all houses in that day, 2 large rooms with a wide hall called a dog run. A door entered from this dog run on each side, and one could rest assured that the homeowner always saw to it that there were 2 sturdy dogs to keep watch over the house both day and night. As was the case in that period of history, the house was built of logs which had been sawed in a pit by operation of a whip saw. The logs had first been felled in the forest, the home builder selecting some 70 or 80 of the tallest trees to be found. They were chopped into proper length and hauled or rolled to the site for use. Deep notches were cut in the ends, which were dovetailed to provide an almost airtight joint for the corners. The foundation, thus obtained, lifted the house some 3 feet above the ground. About a dozen slender logs, some 10 inches in diameter, were laid at regular intervals so that they extended the length of the house to support the floor. The walls were usually built to a height of 7 feet. At either end of the upper framework was set up a stout little tree about 6 feet tall, and so cut as to present 2 short diverging limbs at the top. From one crotch to another, the ridgepole was placed in position. The room itself was composed of wide slabs of wood hewed bodily out of large trees and placed on the topmost tier of the side logs, with their upper ends converging and resting on the ridgepole. To keep the roof slabs in position, a long log was laid over the lower ends of each side of the cabin. Its extremities rested on the upper tier of the end logs, which had been kept unusually long for this purpose. This was in turn held secure by heavy wooden pins. Doors and windows were sawed out after all the logs were in place, and their edges were cased with slabs to keep the walls from sagging. There was no glass, and all openings were protected by strong doors. Window panes were made of paper, when it could be obtained, plentifully coated with hog lard and bear grease. The big fireplace was constructed of bricks, and the chimney was built of bricks, laid in the same alternating manner as were the timbers of the house. The chinks of chimney structure were filled and covered with clay that soon hardened by the heat. All spaces between the logs of the house were then filled with mud and moss and generally plastered over with clay. Slabs were laid for the doors. A perpendicular ladder of 5 or 6 rounds served as a staircase, and the domicile was finished. Thus it can be seen that the Eggleston house commands respect for its age, as well as for its construction and historical value, showing the faith of the people in Gonzales and their future. The city officials of Gonzales have seen fit to preserve this first permanent home of the settlers as a tribute to their frugal labors and their noble pioneer spirit. God grant that Texas show her appreciation for all the noble deeds of those early settlers who left a sunlight garden carved as it were out of the wilderness which was Texas. May Texas treasure in their hearts the memory of the hardships endured by those pioneer citizens, remembering too all the sorrows and the tears they shed. May they not forget the courage of those settlers and the sacrifices made in order that there might always be an Eggleston house in their memory.
Okay, we're gonna go walk over to the museum now. Here we're checking out the back of the museum. We're gonna start back here, walk our way around. You got these really big wrought iron fences with stars that light up at night. Little amphitheater. A very ornate structuring up at the top. Unfortunately, the museum is closed, and so we'll have to come back another day to visit the museum. There's the Texas flag, the Come and Take It flag, and the American flag. This, I imagine, is a fountain sometimes, maybe. Real cool gem I stumbled on here. Let's see. A statue in memory of... Let's see if I can get in there and see it. Memory of the 32 Gonzales men and boys who fought on March 1st, 1836. Fought their way into the beleaguered Alamo to die with Colonel William B. Travis for the liberty of Texas, where the last and only reinforcements to arrive in answer to the final call of William B. Travis, Colonel. You can see the names and ages of the men who answered that call. Other men who fell at the Alamo from Gonzales, and the survivors of the Alamo massacre, Miss Almarin Dickerson and baby daughter from Gonzales. Take another gander at those names and thank you for the sacrifices that you guys gave for us to have our freedom and to stand against the tyranny. We are forever in your debt. You are never forgotten. Let's see here. It says Texas Rangers. Thank you for your service, Rangers. In memory of the Gonzales Ranging Company, the Immortal 32. And then we have one here to the men who sacrificed their lives in defense of the Alamo. Thank you, thank you, thank you for helping to bring freedom to the land. You can see the ornate design of the front of this building. Gonzales Historical Memorial, erected in 1936. Thank you to the Daughters of the Texas Republic. Let's see what we can see here. Oh, they got a little gift shop over there. And some historical photographs over here. Thank you for being an example of courage and the power of what few can do over the majority. There we go. There we go. So you can see in the future, you gotta come between noon, 1, Monday through Saturday. Closed on Sundays. Says the route of General Sam Houston to San Jacinto. Oh, well, that's nice to see that they're in the process of a restoration. And here we have a marker for the Gonzales Memorial Museum, celebrating the Texas Centennial. So that's it for Gonzales. We're now gonna head over and see if we can see Goliad and what Goliad has in store. I'll leave you with this beautiful full tree. Okay guys, I'm gonna show you a sneak peek of something. Okay, so this open field here, Gonzales is looking into making, hopefully, into this beautiful monument with a cannon for the Armed Services Veteran Memorial to honor those who served in the past, present, and future. Looks like a very beautiful monument, and I hope that they can make it work. Okay, we are now on the Goliad, as promised. Hey fans, Michael Koff here, and I have made it to Goliad, and I am visiting the Fannin Battlefield Grounds State Park. So let's see what we can find here. Here's a marker to Coleto and the Goliad Massacre. Let's walk around and see what we can see. So for those of you who don't know, Goliad is known as the massacre because, as the sign pointed out, there were 400 men ordered to go to the aid of the Alamo and to evade the Mexican troops that were coming in, and were surprised by the Mexican troops and went and surrendered. And as they were marched out of town, the Mexican army opened fire and killed every single one of them. So they say. Let's go see what this monument in the middle has to say. Here we go. See if I can zoom in and get it so you guys can read it. In case you can't read it, it says in memory of James W. Fannin Jr. and his fellow patriots who surrendered here on honorable terms on March 20th, 1836, involved the sacrifice of their lives at La Bahia, victims of the Cherry's brutal stroke. They died to break the tyrant's yoke. On fame's eternal camping ground, their silent tents are spread, and glory guards with hollowed round the bivouac of these dead. And I don't know if you can see that there's a little star there. Let's see what's on the rest of this monument. Etching of a Texas flag. There, they got two sabers. And a soldier or a patriot loading the cannon. Looks like little cannonballs at the corners. Beautiful obelisk. So La Bahia became known as Goliad, and what people tend to forget is when the Texas Army was charging General Santa Anna's army in San Jacinto, that the battle cry a lot of Texans remember as being "Remember the Alamo," And the actual battle cry was, "Remember Goliad, remember the Alamo." So you can see beautiful land around here. Such beauty at a tragic location. Thank you, Mr. Yule, for your service. So, taking a moment of silence in memory of the men who lost their lives. If any of the spirits of the men or Colonel Fannin wish to speak, you may, and if I hear it, your message will be shared with everybody who watches this. I can only imagine the trauma of feeling like you were free and then being gunned down. I've just come to pay my respects to you all and thank you for your sacrifice. I know you 400 paid the ultimate price. Texas is ever grateful for you, and you will always, always be remembered. So here we are at the haunted, historic Presidio de la Bahia. Just look at this architecture. Birthplace of Ignacio Zaragoza. Wow. Just look at the beauty of this place. And to think this was here when the Texas Revolution started, and before that. Man, look at how beautiful this is. This was a Spanish fort. Beautiful. So it's about 90 degrees outside, close to 95, 100, but sticking my hand in here feels like it's in the 70s. Incredible how cool it feels in that little hole. Man, the amount of time it had to take to build this fort. sneak peek inside. We walk along the exterior out of respect for the fact that it's closed. Just so beautiful. And the history of everything that went on here. Here's some bigger holes. Wow. Those were beautiful chimes. La Presidio es muy bonita. Es incredible. Well, let's see what we see through here. Oh, there's a steeple. Like a church. It's just beautiful architecture. That's incredible. That's fantastico. Oh, there they got some boards in here. Again, I'm only walking the outside out of respect for the structure and the fact that it is closed. Just amazing. There's a window inside there. It's just, wow. This was a very formidable fort. I bet this is quite the sight to see at night. I don't they still got bells in the tower. Those must have been what we heard. See if I can zoom up and show you how beautiful that is. The structure is just wow. Ooh, there's a cannon. Okay, let's see what's you can see through this little hole. It's just amazing. Huge courtyard. Just wow. '92 Texas citizens and soldiers drew up and signed the first formal Declaration of Independence on December 20th, 1835. In the ensuing war for Texas independence, Colonel James Fannin and 341 prisoners of war were held here, and on Palm Sunday, 1836, were massacred in and around the fort by the Mexican captors. Wow. On Palm Sunday of all days. Can't help wonder with their culture if there was a significance to picking Palm Sunday. So let me see if I can zoom in. There's the front of the canyon that we saw the back of a few minutes ago. Oh wow, look at this view. Let me zoom in so you can get a full view. See the bells in the tower, and to the right is a saint. Look how that's just etched in there perfectly. Wow. And the color is so beautiful. They are doing a great job in preserving this location. I can only imagine how the prisoners must have felt being behind these thick stone walls, knowing their days were numbered. What must have been going through their minds, not knowing when their final fate would be decided. definitely sense the presence of spirits here. Okay, we're gonna leave the spirits here resting in peace. So we're gonna take a look at the the beautiful doors. We're gonna go see what else Goliad has in store. Here we are checking out the grave of Colonel J.W. Fanning and his men during the Texas independence. The wounded were shot one by one in the fort compound. Colonel Fanning was the last to die. Doctors J.H. Barnard and J.E. Field and Jack Shackelford were spared. 25 men were saved by a Mexican woman, the Angel of Goliad. Approximately 30 escaped by feigning death or swimming in the river. The Texas corpses were stripped and partly burned but left unburied. This atrocity, 3 weeks after the fall of the Alamo, gave Texans part of the battle cry, "Remember the Alamo, remember La Bahia," under which the decisive victory at San Jacinto on April 21st, 1836 was won. General Thomas J. Rusk and the Texas Army afterwards marched here, gathered the bones of Fanning's men from the terrain from the Presidio La Bahia, and the remains were carried in procession to the grave and given a military funeral and burial on June 3rd, 1836. So may you find your eternal rest. And no, you have not been forgotten. None of you have. Your sacrifices live on. You forged a nation and a state. There's a cannon on this side with what's etched in stone to be like the flag of Texas. That's where the little grape shot cannonballs would go in. And on this side is another cannon. With the Texas flag and the red arm with the sword flag, which I'll have to look back as I just saw that flag as one of the 9 that flew over here. These cannons stand guard over this beautiful tomb to the men who gave their lives for a nation. There's a stone slab here. It says erected by the state of Texas in honor of the Texas soldiers killed in the Battle of Coleto, March 19th, 1836, under Colonel James Walker Fannin, who were buried on the battlefield, and of Colonel Fannin and his men executed March 27th, 1836, by order of General Santa Anna, and the bodies were burned beneath this monument. Repose their charred remains. Remember Goliad. So before I proceed on, I'm going to take a moment of silence, as this is sacred ground. So the top has what I can only imagine is Colonel Fannin and the Angel of Goliad. And here's another inscription that says, Texan soldiers under Colonel Fannin's command killed and mortally wounded in the Battle of March 19th, 1836, and buried in Texan trenches on the battlefield. Alfred Dorsey, Conrad Eigenauer, John Jackson, John Kelly, William H. Mann, George McKnight, H. Francis Petrus, William Quinn, William F. Savage, Archibald Swords. I'm going to take a moment to walk over here to this placard. And let's see if I can zoom in so you can see the ornate design in between the columns leading up to the statue facade at the top, and etched into the back of the wall here are the names of the men who died or were murdered or executed here in 1836. Thank you all for your service to giving us freedom. These names are in alphabetical order. You all stood with honor, gave your ultimate sacrifice for the birth of a nation. We are forever grateful for your sacrifice and your service to stand up and join the service of helping to form the nation. And so as I leave these hallowed grounds, I want all of you to find peace in the knowledge that you succeeded in forming a republic, which later became a state, and you are never forgotten. Checking out La Bahia Cemetery. Which is right next to Fannin's monument and grave. And out of respect for the dead and the spirits here, I am going to not trespass into their space and respect their right to peace and privacy. May you all find peace and rest. Now we're going to go walk over to this statue here in the middle. Oh, there's a walking path over there. Let's go over there. It'll be easier than to walk on this grass. Angel of Goliad. Thank you, ma'am, for standing for humanity and helping those in need. Francisca Alvarez, March 27th, 1836. You indeed are the embodiment of everything that is good in humanity. And thank you for standing up and helping those that you could. Wow, here's the descendants of the Angel of Goliad. Let's see what's on this wood table I walked by. To the descendants of the Angel of Goliad who served in the military, thank you for your service. I hope you find peace wherever you are and that you made it home safely. Or if you died where you were, know you died fighting for a cause that was won. The officers who commissioned this statue. Here's the placard for the Angel of Goliad. Angel of Goliad. Francisca Alvarez. And to the soldiers at the fort who committed the atrocities, no, I understand you were following orders and you felt you had no choice, but in the end, there always is a choice. And so, no, I don't agree with the choice you made, but I understand the pressure you felt. And so for that, I hope you can find peace. So this wraps up my video for the Texas Freedom. I know I'm missing San Antonio with the Alamo and San Jacinto. I went as a child, teenager to those locations and a young adult, so I do not have photos of those locations, but I have been there, and so I will include photos of those two locations at the end of this video, and hopefully people for generations to come can watch the video and know of how a few men stood up to an entire nation to form a new nation, how atrocities were committed but they still persevered, and men willingly gave their lives so that others could be free, which is the embodiment of our military and the American dream of freedom. And so, knowing with the Alamo how they all were massacred there, however, there is controversy around whether or not Davy Crockett was killed there, or if Colonel Bowie, or not Colonel Bowie, Colonel Travis drew a line in the sand. And so I am going to include photos of those two sites and know that that's where Texas won its freedom. And so always remember, a few men can do great things. See you guys on the next adventure.